few news articles that I thought were pretty interesting. I saw this version of this a while ago. Apparently this thing is now for sale. Amazon Astro. So you pay $1,500, you get this little robot that drives around on the floor of your house spying on people. It's got a camera. Exactly why you would want this is hard to say. And apparently it's not really finished. The very day it went on sale, the developers leaked out confidential critiques from inside the company saying it's fragile, it will throw itself down the stairs. And why would you want someone taking pictures of everybody in your house anyway? I mean, I would think what you would want is a dog, if this is what you want. A dog will look at what's in your house and tell you if something bad is happening and won't otherwise, leak out your secrets and get hacked and everything. But anyway, there's also some drone version of it. I'm not sure that's for sale yet. That flies around your house to look at everything. And anyway, I guess people are going to buy this and God knows what's going to happen. Anyway, you can buy one of them if you want and let me know how it turns out. Similarly, Tesla. Now, Amazon drivers. Yeah, creepy Black Mirror. I know. Amazon drivers have been complaining because in order to cut down on unsafe driving, they put a camera that monitors everything you do, and it totally decreases your pay if you're detected to do anything dangerous while driving. And they say that even normal driving, when people cut you off, it cuts down on your points and everything, and they hate it. You guys don't hear the audio? Do you other guys hear the audio? I think Dark Rogue heard me, so I think that means the audio is working. We'll see what other people say. Well, I don't see any answers. Okay, good. Dark Rogue hears it. Good. Then it must be working. Okay, thank you, Dark Rogue. Anyway, so Amazon evaluates drivers to see if they're driving safely. And they really hate it, but they say it cut down on accidents. So Tesla has put in a safety score, but apparently the safety score is totally messed up. And if you stop at stop sites, it calls those unnecessary stops and punishes you. So if you want a high safety score, you have to roll through stoplights and things like that. So people, in order to get a high score, are driving dangerously. And you want to get a high score because Tesla won't let you get their prototype self-driving unless you convince them that you're safe by getting a high safety score. So they made your driving into a video game, and they poorly designed the video game, so doing unsafe things is how you get points. So that sounds charming. Anyway, this stuff is so FinSpy is is a famous surveillance tool, and Kaspersky has been analyzing it. I heard FinFisher. I think there's a whole series of these. I think these are commercial espionage tools used by nation states. And this one here infects the bootloader. So it puts files that are used to compromise the operating system right from when it first boots up. And it will infect the modern UEFI bootloader, and it will also infect the older bootloader, MBR, if you're using that. And then it has a whole series of files encrypted in different ways. Wouldn't you want the self-driving for unsafe drivers? Well, I don't know. I think the problem is what Tesla calls self-driving is not really self-driving. That's what it's been all along. You're supposed to be a good driver paying attention to compensate for its defects. That's why the whole thing, I don't understand it very well. Anyway, it explains to you all the different levels of bootloading and different encryption on each part. And then once it starts up, you get user mode infection, which what this does, which I thought was very relevant to this class, it downloads a special application called the Pre-Validator, which checks to see if you are a malware analyst. It checks to see if it's in a virtual machine, and usually these things check to see if you have a debugger and other tools to make sure that you don't have any of those things happening. So it won't do the malicious activity unless it passes this test and decides that you're really a victim and not an analyst. Then it deploys 30 shell codes and runs them on the machine. I don't know what the point of that is, but it's a post-validator. And I think it's, again, just trying to make sure that you're not some kind of security analysis machine, but that you're really just a helpless victim. Yeah, it checks the execution results for all kinds of suspicious. Yeah, the pre-validator, the post-validator drops these files, sends screenshots. The attacker validates the infection, and so once they've decided that you really are a victim and not an analysis machine, will it then launch the Trojan. So this is interesting. I haven't heard of this kind of stuff in Windows before, and apparently it's new. In Android, you get used to this. When I took an Android malware analysis class, they said you have to have a real Android device. The Android malware, most or all of it, is able to tell when it's running in a virtual machine and it won't run. So it looks like this is probably the beginning of the same kind of thing for Windows, where we'd have to get real Windows machines to do malware analysis or improve our virtual environments to be more sneaky and hide the fact that they're virtual. And there are extensions to various virtual machines to try to hide the fact that it's a virtual machine. Anyway, so there's an Azure password flaw, and what it is there's some kind of proxy where you log in, where it tests your password before it gets to the real machine, and that has no rate limiting. So you can just brute force thousands of passwords and it will never notice or lock you out. And they reported it to Microsoft, and Microsoft said this is the way we designed it intentionally, and so we're not going to fix it. So we'll see how long that lasts. It sounds like something they do need to fix. How do the bad guys test their malware? Well, they do. And one simple thing is using VirusTotal. In fact, there was a guy that actually went to prison because he made a VirusTotal-like website which he rented to malware authors that would test their malware against many antivirus engines. And but I know what you're saying. What kind of virtual machine do they use? That's a good question. If you're going to develop that kind of virtual machine we were just talking about, I guess you'd have to develop it on real machines, not virtual machines. Yeah. That's what I used to do before there were virtual machines. I got my first Windows Server certification. I just went on eBay and bought like 4 people's used computers, and I set up a domain in my house. I remember at that time I had like 4 machines with giant CRT monitors piled up all over the place. And I slept on a sleeping bag on the floor, and I was worried that if an earthquake came, they would squash me in my sleep with those heavy things rolling over on me. But I did build a Windows domain in practice and get my Windows 2000 server certification. And, you know, that you could just do that. You could have a whole bunch of laptops and not use virtual machines. Anyway, this is something I'm trying to try and understand better, because this is apparently the cat's meow. Instead of encryption, you do tokenization, which sounds like exactly the same thing to me. I'm not getting it. But apparently tokenization, you replace each letter by a different letter, and the letters are drawn from a long one-time pad-like key. So it just sounds like one-time pad encryption to me, which is fine. One-time pad encryption is very strong. But then they say the one-time pad is too hard to move, so you use some kind of mathematical algorithm to generate the one-time pad, and that's just what ordinary private key encryption is. So anyway, I don't quite understand how any of this is different than encryption, but I will try and get it right. If I can figure out what it is, or if any of you can figure out what it is and let me know, I would like to add it to my cryptography class if it's actually worth anything. They claim it is something different than encryption and stronger and better. So apparently there's something great here and I'm not getting it. So Microsoft has a new security feature that you can add if you add this optional patch. And if you add this patch, that's why I thought this is really quite interesting for this class again, this adds some kind of new feature called Microsoft Exploit Protection Export Address Filtering. And I don't know what that is, although I can kind of guess because there's a series of similar protections in Windows for heap sprays and such. But anyway, they say this feature is a security feature, but it will break some old software. So when you install this, you might find that some of your software doesn't work anymore, and then you have to put on another patch to turn it off. Known issue rollback feature. So anyway, this does sound like an interesting security feature. It would be good to understand how it works and test it, and maybe write some code to show it blocking an attack or something. That might be nice. And here's another piece of malware called Squirrel Waffle. And what this one does is it comes in as spam. And okay, you get an email which gives you a URL. When you click on the URL, it downloads a zip file. The zip file contains a Microsoft Office document. The Office contains a macro. When you run the macro, it drops a VBS file, which it runs, and the VBS downloads 5 DILs and runs them through run-dill32. And then the DIL downloads a text file, which is really an exe file, which is a Cobalt Strike beacon. And Cobalt Strike is really popular. Cobalt Strike is a commercial tool. Metasploit that we use in the pen testing classes is the free exploit kit. And Cobalt Strike is the proprietary exploit kit that costs like $1,500, and you're only supposed to get it if you're a legitimate researcher, and they vet you and everything. But bad guys have gotten it, and they're using it, and it's extremely powerful. It makes it easy to take over things. It's got the beacon is the main tool. You get people to run this beacon on their machine. It will evade all the antivirus, and then it will give you complete control of that machine and do all sorts of stuff. So a whole lot of real malware goes through some kind of steps like this, and then ultimately sticks a Cobalt Strike beacon on your machine. And this is why some people are pretty upset about these dual-use products that are useful both for legitimate red team pen testers and also used by real criminals. But it's true of almost everything, even a very innocent product like TeamViewer. TeamViewer is just used for remote control of machines for tech support, but it's very commonly used by criminals. They either trick you into putting TeamViewer on, or they get a stolen copy of TeamViewer and put it in their malware. And I think what these guys have done is steal and crack proprietary copies of Cobalt Strike and then put it in there. But I'm hearing an awful lot about Cobalt Strike-based malware these days. The problem is there's no free version available for us, so I can't give people projects working with it. There's a free version of the beacon, but the beacon is no good without the server, and there's no free version of the server that I can find. So they said if you want to learn what Cobalt Strike is for free, the closest thing you can get is Metasploit. Yeah, Armitage is just a GUI on top of Metasploit. I used Armitage for a while. I wasn't very happy with it. Wasn't maintained enough. Armitage just puts sort of a cartoony GUI on top of Metasploit as far as I could tell. It may have some other advanced features. But anyway, Metasploit is the main thing that is the free version of Cobalt Strike for what it's worth. And that we use a lot. Anyway, Bitcoin, one of the huge problems with Bitcoin is it wastes a ton of electricity. And so now some Bitcoin people have been trying to claim that it's green because by using more electricity, it makes the electricity cheaper or something, which is kind of hard to understand. And now, of course, the truth is coming out. There's something called coal waste. Coal waste is apparently something left over from when you normally mine and purify coal, and it's even worse than normal coal. And there are electricity plants that burn coal waste, which make even more pollution than normal coal. And they were going to shut down this plant in Pennsylvania that burned coal waste, but then they realized they could put Bitcoin miners there. And now they're going to ramp it back up to full speed, spewing out all the poison in order to run Bitcoin mining. So, this is so much for the green Bitcoin. Anyway, and here's the last thing I'll mention. I did not really entirely understand this, and I'll put it in the chat if anybody wants to check this out. It is a way to run an executable by you write an exe into a file's NTFS stream and run it as a process. You can then delete the file, and the process continues running in memory. So anyway, it sounds like something that ought to be a project in this class if you figure out how it works. I didn't try to set it up or anything, but it sounds like kind of a cute trick. Anyway, all right. So let's get to the official stuff.